So, Fags, the decision behind Josh Shackey getting relegated to the twos, what sort of forced your hand there?
Oh, basically form. I mean, you know, it's hard for a young 19-year-old forward in football these days playing up against 27, 28-year-old guys who've got big, strong bodies to sustain form and confidence. And what's happened to Josh is what's happened to a lot of young forwards over as many years as I can remember, and that is they do lose their confidence and their form sometimes, and the best thing for them is to actually go back to the reserves and re-find it. And you know, I saw that at Hawthorn in early days. You know, Franklin and Ruffhead had to do that on occasions. I was chatting to Alistair Lynch about it during the week, and he copped that a few times early in his career, and we've seen recently McCartan, who was the #1 draft pick in the land, go back for 4 or 5 weeks at St Kilda. So it's not unusual, and in a sense it helps those young players to grow and get better.
How did he cop that? Obviously you've had to discuss this with him, and how did he respond when you told him he had to go back to twos?
Very well. I mean, he's an honest young man. He knew that his form wasn't all that good, and he was struggling with that fact. So in some ways it's a relief to them when they can actually go back and re-find it. So I'd probably describe it as that way with Josh. He's incredibly honest young fella, and he knows exactly what's going on in his game.
Is the decision about his future weighing on his mind, do you think, Fags? And the club's obviously pretty keen to get an answer on that sooner rather than later?
Yeah, it's hard to know. As coach, I just coach him. I don't sort of go into those areas with him unless he wants to raise it with me, and he hasn't. So I tend to leave that to David Noble and Dom Ambrogio, our list manager. But obviously, as a 19-year-old boy, if they are the things that he's thinking about, that must be tough.
You're worried you might lose him?
Oh, you're worried that you'd lose any of your players, but it's one of those realities of AFL football. You know, I was at Hawthorn when we lost Lance Franklin, so we didn't want to lose him, but we did. And you know, I'm sure like Bradley Hill last year at Hawthorn went back to Fremantle this year. So you never like it when you lose players, but sometimes the pull to go home or to do something else is large for them, and they make those life decisions. So what I do know is that in Josh's time at this club, he's been coached well, he's been managed well off the field in terms of welfare, and I think the club's done everything they can to make this a good place for him to be, and that is the only bit that we can control.
He's only been here 18 months. Do you think rookie contracts should be longer in the AFL?
Yeah, I've got a view on that. I particularly think for first-round draft picks, you know, I think it should be 3 to 4 years at least before they can consider moving somewhere else, unless there's some extenuating circumstances which do pop up at times in life. But by and large, I think clubs invest a lot in those first round picks, and if you've got the opportunity to keep them for longer guaranteed, then from a club perspective that would be fantastic. I would imagine from a AFL Players Association perspective, they like the angle of free trade and the ability of players to move, and so they would probably not like that. But certainly from a club perspective, I think even from the perspective of that young player, to be thinking about your future 2 years into a start at a new place and whether you want to go somewhere else is borderline ridiculous.
Do you think it's out external factors or people getting it in players' ears at times?
Well, there are probably lots of conversations and things that go on that we don't get to hear about that may well put pressure on them, mate. I mean, that's the world we live in professional sport. It's not meant to happen, but I'm pretty sure it does happen. In fact, I know it does happen. So there might be other things that are coming from the outside that we have no control over.
And the 2 years, does it make it difficult for you to assess what sort of player Josh is going to be, how you treat him in this instance? I know you put him back to the twos. Does that make it more difficult?
Him going back to the twos has got nothing to do with all the speculation. It's purely based on form. Look, it's a difficult one to answer. I think probably I've talked enough about Josh. Is the way I feel at the moment.
What about the captain coming with a massive boost, and certainly cancels out the loss of Tom Rockcliffe, doesn't it, to bring Beams back?
Oh, it's great to have Beamsy back. I'd like to have Beams and Rockcliffe in the one team, but I'm glad that at least losing one, we got another one back. Yeah, he's had a great year, Dane, leading up until the injury. He's very enthusiastic about this weekend. He'll provide great leadership, as did Tom, while Dane was out. So, fortunate to have him back this week. He's worked really hard to get it right and trained well the last week. So he was close actually last week, but we just were pretty conservative with the management.
Fags, you don't seem to be having too much luck with when you're catching teams. Like you caught Hawthorn on their way back up, and the Crows have probably got something in store after 2 losses.
Yeah, I'm not worried about that though. We sort of concern ourselves with what we're trying to do, and you know, if you want to be a good team and be successful, you've got to deal with all those things during seasons. You know, teams coming back into form, teams that have got guys playing milestone games, teams that have lost. Good teams that have lost a couple in a row that want to take it out on you. All that's all part of it. So we'll just take tomorrow night's game as another learning experience. I mean, Adelaide have given us some pretty severe beltings over the last 3 years, so we're certainly in the business tomorrow night about earning some respect back from them and making sure that win, lose or draw when they walk away tomorrow night, they have a view that the Brisbane team that they've played in recent times is a much harder, stronger unit than it has been in the past.
They were pretty scintillating over that first maybe month and a bit of the competition, weren't they?
Oh yeah, they are. If you let them get on the outside and use the footy, they can really take you to the cleaners. So we've got to be good at our contested stuff tomorrow night. We've got to be good at our defensive mechanisms to keep that ball locked in. And you know, we learned a lot. We played them in the JLT series. It was our last game. We actually played really well offensively ourselves. We kicked 15 odd goals and I think we went down by 40 points, but they kicked 20 odd goals, and you know, they showed us what they could do on that day. And our ball use was good that day, but our defence wasn't great. So that's a focus coming into the game.
The past couple of weeks, Melbourne and North have put someone on Rory Sloane, and he's had a very sort of minimal influence. Yeah. How eager would you be to follow that
what do you reckon,
blueprint?
Michael? Should I put one on him or not?
Oh, I reckon I would. But I don't know about your cattle, and I know you've sort of used it almost as an education a couple of weeks with Berry.
But we may well do that again tomorrow night. We just sort of got to work through that. It's been invaluable for Jared Berry to have those experiences. So. We'll give that consideration. It a little bit depends on the weather too. If it becomes a wet sort of a game, sometimes tagging's a bit of a waste of time, and you're better off to, you know, use your energy at the coalface to win the football and to surge it forward. So we'll wait and see.
Do you think Hamilton will play mainly up forward, or will you swing him around down back where he played last year?
Well, we think he'll probably play mainly as a forward. That's what he's been doing at the NEFL level. He kicked 5 last week, and I think a couple of weeks prior to that he kicked 4. He's a promising young player, another Queenslander, which is great to have one in the team. Really good leg speed, nice hands. It'd be good to have him get in there and do well, and we also know that we've got the flexibility to put him down back if we need to.